In this video, I'm going to show you how to place the upper control arm on this Honda Accord. Located right behind your front wheel. You do need an alignment after this job is done, so let's get started. Use a 19mm socket, remove all 5 lug nuts, and then remove the wheel. Let's remove the axle nut. You're going to need a 36mm socket. The axle nut on these vehicles is squished in right here. We're going to use a punch or a chisel and a hammer and open it up a little bit. Just like that. That'll make it a whole lot easier to remove it. Basically unlocks the axle nut. Now use a 36mm socket and remove the axle nut. Now if you don't have an impact that'll do this, what you can do is use a breaker bar, put a pry bar between the lug studs, and that will prevent the wheel from spinning as you try to break this free. Use a punch and a hammer, tap it in. There we go. If needed, spray some rust penetrant in there, but you want to make sure this breaks free from the hub. Use a 12mm socket and remove this bolt that holds the bracket for the brake hose onto the knuckle. Sometimes these get stuck in there, so if needed, work it back and forth so you don't break the bolt. Remove the bracket. Let's separate the upper ball joint from the knuckle. To do that, we have to first remove the cotter pin so we can unlock the castle nut. Sometimes these get stuck in here. If needed, we'll cut it off, but it looks like mine broke free. It's easiest to use cutters because it grabs onto it pretty tight. You can also use some locking pliers. There we go. Use a 17mm socket to remove this mounting nut. Once it's mostly off, leave it on a couple threads, and now take a hammer to the side of the knuckle, and with the vibrations of the hammer hitting it, this should separate and break free. The nut will just prevent this from separating too much. Here we go. There we go. Remove the mounting nut. Separate this. The knuckle is going to want to come forward. Make sure the axle pushes through as the knuckle comes forward so it doesn't separate the CV joint. It's not going to go further than this, but you want to make sure it pushes through. Let's remove this 10mm mounting nut that holds the bracket for the ABS wire. Now you may not necessarily have to remove this, but I like to give it extra slack when the knuckle is forward. Take that out, and there we go. We're going to have to remove the top of the strut so we can make space for our upper control arm bolts. So use a 14mm socket on these 3 mounting nuts and remove them all. We also have to remove these 3 12mm mounting nuts which hold this brace on, but the studs actually come up through the strut. Now pull down on the knuckle and pull the strut out. You want to make sure that the coils of the coil spring kind of sit, or the control arm sits in between the coil springs, and this is going to give us plenty of access for our bolts, which we can now remove using a 14mm socket. You can do this by hand with a ratchet, wrench, or if you have a swivel and a power tool, you can stick an extension in there and reach them from the other side of the strut. Once again, remove both bolts. There's one, and the other side. With this loose, you can remove the control arm. There it is. Let's get the new control arm lined up. Might have to push the strut back in, move the bushings around. Have at least one bolt ready so you can stick it through. That way it'll hold the control arm in place. All right, so there's one. You don't have to thread it in yet. You just want it lined up. And 2. And now with both of them in, try to start them into their threads by hand. It's important that you don't cross-thread these, especially if you're going to use a power tool with a swivel like I did. You want to make sure they're going to start in. Both of mine just did, And by the way, these bolts are the same, so you don't need to worry about front and rear. Let's snug them up. The way the control arm is sitting right now is actually perfect. This is ride height, so I'm going to leave it like this, jammed between the coil spring and the strut. You want it at ride height so that it doesn't put pressure on the bushings as it's sitting naturally on the ground. Otherwise, if you torque it and tighten it with the bushings down, they'll most likely tear very quickly. Snug these up. .23 foot-pounds is the torque for both of these bolts. Bring the strut down and line it back up with its mounting hole. Shove it up. Bring the strut back up and start on whichever mounting nut you can get to first. There we go. Once you get one started, it's going to be a little bit easier to start the other ones. Snug these up. Just go back and forth. And tighten up the little 12 millimeters. Bring these two together. Have your mounting nut ready. Pull the control arm down with the stud through the knuckle and start on the mounting nut as it pokes through. Use that 17 millimeter socket to tighten this back up. .35 foot-pounds is the torque for this mounting nut. That's torqued, but this being a castle nut, we have to line up the slot so the cotter pin can go through. So we're going to keep tightening. You never want to loosen to do this. Just move it over to the next one. Right there. Once your slot is lined up, stick your cotter pin through. And we're going to bend it over to lock it in. Make sure it goes all the way through. Perfect. Let's reconnect this bracket holding on the brake hose. Use that 12 millimeter headed bolt, snug it up. Don't make it too tight, just snug it so it can hold the bracket on the knuckle. Reinstall this bracket for the ABS wire and the bolt holding it on. This is very small, so when you tighten it, make sure you don't over tighten it, just snug it up. Let's get the wheel on. Start on all 5 lug nuts in a cross pattern, bottom them out, and also in a cross pattern, torque them to 79 foot-pounds. .79 foot-pounds in a cross pattern. Here we go. Double check them all. Now take it for a road test and don't forget to get in alignment. Now that the wheel is on and there's upwards pressure on the strut, we can torque these all down. For the 14 millimeter headed mounting nuts, it's 41 foot-pounds. For the 12 millimeter mounting nuts, it's 16 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.